The dust had settled hours ago, but Cole Brennan could still taste it in his teeth. He'd been riding since dawn, following a trail that didn't exist anymore, washed out by spring rains and time. The town he was looking for, Redemption Flats, was supposed to be 2 days north of Santa Fe, but the map he'd bought from a drunk prospector in Albuquerque was either wrong or a lie, and now the sun was dropping low, turning the mesa country into something copper and unforgiving. He wasn't lost. Cole Brennan didn't get lost. He was just delayed. The horse beneath him, a gray mare named Patience, snorted and tossed her head. She'd earned her name by being the opposite, quick to spook, slower to forgive, but she had good instincts, and right now those instincts were telling her something was off. Cole pulled the reins gently, scanning the ridgeline ahead. Nothing moved. No birds. No wind through the scrub. Just the kind of silence that made a man check his sidearm without thinking. Then he saw it, a thin column of smoke, rising from somewhere beyond the next rise. Not a wildfire too controlled, too steady. A chimney, maybe, or a campfire someone forgot to put out. He clicked his tongue, and Patience moved forward, ears flat. The cabin came into view slowly, like it was deciding whether to show itself. It sat in a shallow draw, half hidden by juniper and red rock, built from weathered pine that had gone silver in the sun. The roof sagged on one side, and the porch looked like it might collapse if you stepped on it wrong. But the smoke was real, curling up from a stone chimney, and that meant someone was home. Cole dismounted 20 yards out, leading Patience by the reins. His hand drifted to the Colt on his hip, not drawing, just resting. Old habit. "Hello, the house," he called, his voice cutting through the stillness. No answer. He waited, counting heartbeats. 10, 20. "I'm not looking for trouble. Just passing through. Saw your smoke, and thought I'd ask after the road to Redemption Flats." Still nothing. Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't like this. Didn't like the way the air felt too thick, or the way the door hung slightly open. Just enough to see darkness inside, but nothing more. He was about to turn back to his horse when he heard it. A voice. Small. Young. "Papa said you'd come." Cole froze. The girl stepped out from behind the cabin, not from the door, from the side. Like she'd been watching him the whole time. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, wearing a faded calico dress that was too big for her and boots that had seen better years. Her hair was dark, pulled back in a braid that had come loose, and her face was smudged with dust. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They were calm. Too calm. Like she'd been expecting him. "Papa said you'd come," she repeated, smiling now. A small, hopeful smile that didn't match the empty cabin or the silence or the way Cole's instincts were screaming at him to get back on his horse. "I think you got the wrong man, little miss," Cole said carefully, keeping his voice soft. "I don't know your papa." The girl tilted her head, still smiling. "He said you'd say that." Cole glanced at the cabin, then back at her. "Where is your papa?" "Inside." "Is he hurt?" She didn't answer right away, just looked at him with those steady, unblinking eyes. Then she turned and walked toward the cabin, her small boots crunching on the gravel. "Come see," she said. Every instinct Cole had told him not to follow her. Told him to mount up, ride hard, and forget he'd ever seen this place. But something else, something older than instinct, made him tie Patience to a post and step onto that sagging porch. The door creaked when he pushed it open. The inside of the cabin was dim, lit only by the low fire in the hearth. It smelled like smoke and old wood, and something else, something faint and metallic that Cole recognized but didn't want to name. The girl stood in the center of the room, waiting, and on the floor, near the back wall, was a man. He was sitting upright, propped against a saddle, his legs stretched out in front of him. His shirt was dark with blood, dried and stiff, and his head was tilted back, eyes closed. His face was pale, carved with lines of pain that had settled into stillness. Dead. Maybe a day, maybe less. Cole's hand moved to his gun again, but the girl didn't flinch. "He said you'd help me." Cole's throat was dry. "Who was he?" "My papa." "What happened to him?" "Bad men came." Cole knelt slowly, eyes on the girl, then on the man. There were bullet wounds, 2, maybe 3. One in the chest, another in the side. Whoever he was, he'd fought. And lost. When did they come? Yesterday. Before the sun came up. Where'd they go? The girl shrugged. Away. Cole stood, his mind racing. This wasn't his fight, wasn't his problem. He didn't know this man, didn't know this girl, and he sure as hell didn't know why she thought he was supposed to be here. But then she reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled something out. A photograph. She held it up, and Cole felt the ground tilt beneath him. The photo was old, creased, and faded, but the image was clear enough. Two men, standing side by side in front of a saloon. One of them was younger, grinning, his hat pushed back. The other was older, serious, with a scar running down his left cheek. Cole knew the younger man, because it was him, 10 years ago, maybe 12. And the man standing next to him, the one with the scar, was the same man lying dead on the floor. The girl smiled again, softer this time. Papa said you'd remember. Cole's heart was pounding now, his breath shallow. He didn't remember, didn't know this man's face, didn't know his name. But the photograph didn't lie. What's your name? He asked, his voice rough. Annabelle. Annabelle, I don't. He stopped, shaking his head. I don't know who your papa was. She stepped closer, holding the photograph up higher. He said you saved his life once, in a place called Silver Creek. He said you didn't even know you did it. Silver Creek. The name hit Cole like a fist. He did remember Silver Creek, a mining camp, lawless and wild, where he'd spent a winter working security for a man who paid in gold and asked no questions. There'd been a fight, a bad one, and Cole had stepped in when 3 men cornered someone in an alley. He didn't remember the man's face, didn't even remember if he'd lived, but he remembered the blood. He never forgot, Annabelle said quietly. He said if anything ever happened to him, you'd come. He said you were the kind of man who always showed up. Cole stared at the photograph, then at the girl, then at the man on the floor, and for the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. Cole set the photograph down on the table, his hands unsteady. He didn't believe in fate, didn't believe the universe had a plan or that roads crossed for reasons beyond luck and bad timing. But standing in that cabin, looking at a dead man he didn't remember and a little girl who'd been waiting for him like he was the answer to a prayer, he didn't have a better explanation. Annabelle, he said, turning to face her. Do you have kin? Someone I can take you to? She shook her head. Just Papa. No aunts? Uncles? Anyone? No. Cole exhaled slowly, dragging a hand through his hair. Then we need to get you to a town. Somewhere safe. There's got to be someone who can... He said you'd take me. Take you where? To Santa Rosa. To the sisters. The sisters? The mission. Papa said they'd look after me if he couldn't. She said it so matter-of-factly, like it was already decided, like Cole had already agreed. He hadn't. Annabelle, I'm headed north. Santa Rosa's southeast, near the Pecos. That's 2 weeks out of my way. Maybe more. Papa said you'd do it anyway. Cole's jaw tightened. The girl wasn't asking. She was telling. And the worst part was, she was right. He looked at the man again, this stranger who'd carried a photograph for years, who'd believed in a debt Cole didn't even know he owed. A man who died believing Cole Brennan was the kind of person who kept promises he'd never made. All right, Cole said finally, the words tasting like ash. I'll take you to Santa Rosa. But first, we bury your father. Annabelle nodded. I already dug the hole. Cole blinked. You what? Out back? I started yesterday, but the ground's hard. She looked at him with those steady eyes. I knew you'd finish it. The grave was shallow, but honest. Cole worked in silence, the shovel biting into caliche and stone, while Annabelle sat on a rock nearby, watching. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just watched, like she was memorizing every motion. When it was deep enough, Cole wrapped the man in a blanket and lowered him down as gently as he could. Annabelle placed a wooden cross at the head, 2 pieces of kindling lashed together with twine. Do you want to say something? Cole asked. She shook her head. I already did. Last night. Cole nodded and started filling the grave. By the time he finished, the sun was gone, and the sky had turned the color of a bruise. He washed his hands in a bucket of water near the porch, then sat on the steps, exhausted. Annabelle came out a few minutes later, carrying a tin plate with beans and cornbread. She handed it to him without a word, then sat beside him with her own. They ate in silence. "What's in Redemption Flats?" she asked after a while. Cole glanced at her. "Work, maybe." "What kind?" "The kind that pays." She chewed thoughtfully. "Papa said you used to be a lawman." "Your papa said a lot of things." "Were you?" Cole set the plate down. "Long time ago." "Why'd you stop?" He didn't answer right away. Didn't know if he wanted to. But something about the way she asked, curious, not accusing, made him speak. "Because the law doesn't always do what's right, and doing what's right doesn't always keep you alive." Annabelle nodded. Like that made perfect sense. Papa said the same thing. Cole looked at her. "He tell you what he did? Before?" "He was a scout. For the army. Then he wasn't anymore." She shrugged. "He didn't talk about it much." "Smart man." They finished eating, and Cole took the plates inside. When he came back out, Annabelle was standing at the edge of the porch, staring into the dark. "What is it?" Cole asked. "Someone's coming." Cole's hand went to his gun. "How do you know?" "I can hear them." He listened. At first, there was nothing. Then faint but unmistakable hoofbeats. Multiple horses. Moving slow. "Inside," Cole said. Annabelle didn't argue. She slipped through the door, and Cole followed, pulling it shut behind them. He moved to the window, peering through a gap in the boards. 3 riders, coming down the draw. They moved cautiously, spread out, their silhouettes dark against the fading light. Cole's gut twisted. These weren't travelers, weren't lost. They were hunting. The lead rider stopped about 30 yards from the cabin, raising a hand. The other 2 fanned out, circling wide. "We know you're in there," the man called. His voice was rough, like gravel scraped over iron. "Come on out, and we'll make this quick." Cole didn't move. "We don't want the girl," the man continued. "Just want to know what her old man told her before he died. That's all. You hand her over, we'll be on our way." Annabelle stood behind Cole, her hand gripping the back of his coat. "They're lying," she whispered. "I know." The lead rider waited, then sighed. "All right. Hard way, then." He nodded, and one of the other men dismounted, pulling a torch from his saddle. Cole's blood went cold. "Wait," he called, stepping away from the window. He opened the door halfway, staying in shadow. "What do you want with her?" The man grinned, teeth flashing in the dim light. "That's between us and her papa. But since he's not answering, we figured we'd ask her. She's a child, old enough to remember." "Remember what?" The man's grin faded. "Where he hid it." Cole's mind raced. Whatever this was, it wasn't about revenge. It was about something the girl's father had taken, or hidden, and these men weren't leaving until they got it. "She doesn't know anything," Cole said. "Then I guess we don't need her after all." The man with the torch stepped forward, and Cole knew he was out of time. "All right," he said, stepping fully into the doorway. "You want to talk? Let's talk. But the girl stays inside." The lead rider studied him, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Come on down, friend. Let's see what kind of man you are." Cole glanced back at Annabelle. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "Papa said you wouldn't let them take me," she whispered. Cole didn't answer. He just stepped onto the porch, his hand resting on the grip of his Colt, and the night held its breath. The man with the torch stopped advancing when Cole reached the bottom step. The lead rider dismounted slowly, deliberately, boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and left out in the weather. His coat hung open, revealing a revolver on each hip and a knife strapped to his belt. "Name's Vance," he said, his voice carrying across the space between them. "You got a name, friend?" "Cole." "Cole." Vance nodded like he was tasting the word. "You don't look like family. So, what are you just passing through? Wrong place? Wrong time?" "Something like that." Vance smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Shame. Man like you. Probably got places to be, things to do. Wouldn't want to die over someone else's mistake." "Whose mistake would that be?" "The girl's father. Man named Hewitt." Vance gestured toward the cabin. "He worked for us. Did a job. Got paid. But somewhere between the job and the payout, He decided to get greedy. And you think a little girl knows where it is? I think her father talked too much before he died, and I think she's smarter than she looks. Vance took a step closer, his hand resting on one of his pistols. Now I'm a reasonable man, Cole. I don't like killing folks who aren't part of the problem. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to step aside, we're going to have a quick conversation with the girl, and then we're all going to ride away. Nobody has to bleed. Cole didn't move. And if I don't step aside, Vance's smile faded. Then you're part of the problem. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The only sound was the wind, low and mournful, and the crackle of the torch in the third man's hand. Cole's mind was working fast, calculating angles, distances, odds. 3 men, all armed. He was good, better than good, but not invincible. If this turned into a fight, someone was dying. Maybe all of them. But if he stepped aside, Annabelle was dead. He knew that, as surely as he knew his own name. She doesn't know anything, Cole said, his voice quiet but firm. Her father didn't tell her, didn't have time. You sure about that? I'm sure. Vance studied him, eyes narrowing. You're lying. I'm not. Then you won't mind if we ask her ourselves. I do mind. Vance sighed, shaking his head. You know what your problem is, Cole? You think being stubborn makes you brave, but all it does is make you dead. He nodded, and the man with the torch moved forward again. Cole drew. The Colt was in his hand before the torchbearer took 3 steps. The barrel leveled at Vance's chest. The other 2 men froze, hands hovering over their guns. Next man who moves gets a bullet, Cole said. Vance raised his hand slowly, palms out. Easy. Now. No need for that. You're leaving. Now. Am I? You are. Vance chuckled, low and cold. You really think you're faster than all 3 of us? I think I'm faster than you. And that's enough. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Vance's eyes flicked to his men, then back to Cole. The math was simple. If Cole fired first, Vance was a dead man. But so was Cole, once the other 2 drew. A standoff. And then, from inside the cabin, Annabelle's voice cut through the tension. It's in the well. Everyone turned. The girl stood in the doorway, small and pale in the firelight. Her hands were clenched at her sides, her face hard. It's in the well, she repeated. Behind the cabin. Papa wrapped it in oilcloth and dropped it down. That's where it is. Vance's grin returned, slow and triumphant. See? Smart girl. Knew she'd come around. Annabelle. Cole started, but she shook her head. They're not leaving until they get it, she said. So give it to them, and then they'll go. Vance looked at Cole. You heard her. Lower the gun, and let's all take a look. Cole didn't lower the gun, but he also didn't fire. Slowly, he stepped back, letting Vance and his men move toward the well. The torchbearer went first, holding the flame over the stone lip while the second man leaned down, peering into the darkness. There's a rope, the man said. Something tied to it. Pull it up. The man hauled on the rope, hand over hand, until a bundle emerged wrapped in oilcloth, just like Annabelle said. He set it on the ground, and Vance knelt, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a leather satchel, worn and heavy. Vance opened it, and even in the dim light, Cole could see the glint of gold coins. Vance laughed, a sharp barking sound. Well, I'll be damned. She wasn't lying. He stood, slinging the satchel over his shoulder. Pleasure doing business with you, Cole. And you too, little miss. He mounted his horse, his men following suit. The torch was tossed to the ground, sputtering in the dirt. One more thing, Vance said, looking down at Cole. You got lucky tonight, but luck runs out. If I were you, I'd ride hard and forget you ever saw us. He spurred his horse, and the 3 men disappeared into the dark, hoofbeats fading like thunder rolling away. Cole stood there, his gun still in his hand, his heart pounding. Annabelle stepped down from the porch, walking past him to the well. She stared into it for a long moment, then looked up at Cole. They're coming back, she said. What? They're coming back. Papa said they would. He said men like that always do. Cole holstered his gun, his jaw tight. Why'd you tell them? Because they would have burned the cabin down if I didn't, and you would have tried to stop them, and then you'd be dead. She looked at him, and her eyes weren't a child's anymore. Papa said, you'd try to save me even if it killed you. He said I had to be smart, had to keep you alive. Cole felt something cold settle in his chest. Annabelle, what did your father hide? She smiled, small and sad. Not gold. And before Cole could ask what she meant, she reached into her pocket and pulled out another photograph. This one showed a group of men, 10, maybe 12, standing in front of a bank. All of them armed, all of them grinning, and in the center, holding a shotgun, was Vance. Papa took this 2 years ago, Annabelle said. He was their scout. He knew where they'd hit next, who they'd kill. She looked at Cole. He was going to turn them in, but they found out. Cole's stomach dropped. The gold in that satchel was bait. Papa said it'd buy us time, a day, maybe 2, before they figured out what he really hid, which was. Annabelle handed him the photograph. Proof, names, dates, everything the law would need to hang them. Cole stared at the photograph, then at the girl, and he understood. She hadn't saved him. She'd just started a war. Cole didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, watching the dark, listening for hoofbeats that didn't come. Annabelle stayed inside, curled up on a blanket near the hearth, her breathing slow and steady. She trusted him. That was the worst part. She trusted him completely, the way children trust before the world teaches them not to. When the first light broke over the mesa, pale and thin, Cole stood and stretched. His back ached, his eyes burned, but his mind was clear. They had to move. Now, he saddled Patience quickly, tying down his bedroll and what little supplies he had. Then he went inside, crouching beside Annabelle. Time to go, he said gently. She opened her eyes, alert instantly, and sat up. Where? Santa Rosa. Like your father wanted. They'll follow us. I know. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. They rode east, into the sun, keeping to the low country where the arroyos ran deep and the rocks cast long shadows. Cole pushed Patience hard, but not recklessly, and Annabelle sat behind him, her small arms wrapped around his waist, silent. By midday, they reached a creek barely more than a trickle, but enough to water the horse and refill their canteens. Cole dismounted, helping Annabelle down, and they sat in the shade of a cottonwood while Patience drank. You hungry? Cole asked, pulling out a strip of jerky. Annabelle took it, chewing slowly. Thank you. For what? For not leaving. Cole didn't answer. He stared at the water, watching it slide over stones, and thought about all the times he had left, all the people he'd walked away from because it was easier, safer, smarter. Your father, Cole said after a while. What was his first name? Daniel. Daniel Hewitt. Cole rolled the name around, trying to pull a memory from the fog. Silver Creek. You said he was in an alley. He said there were 3 men. They wanted his money, his horse. He said he would have let them take it, but they wanted to kill him anyway, just because. Annabelle looked at Cole. He said you came out of nowhere. You didn't ask questions, you just helped. Cole closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was back in Silver Creek, a rough, half-frozen mining camp where the only law was the kind you made yourself. He remembered the alley, remembered the sound of fists hitting flesh, the grunts of men too drunk to fight fair. He'd been on his way to the saloon, minding his own business. When he heard it, he'd thought about walking past, but he hadn't. I didn't do much, Cole said. Broke a man's nose, maybe his ribs. They ran off. You carried him to the doctor. Paid for it, too. Cole frowned. I don't remember that. Papa did. He said you wouldn't even tell him your name. Just said, don't let them take what's yours. And then you left. Cole opened his eyes, staring at the girl. He remembered that? For 10 years? He said, it changed him, made him believe there were still good men in the world. Annabelle smiled, small and sad. He said if anything ever happened, I should find you, because good men don't quit. Cole felt something crack inside him, something he'd kept buried for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Your father was wrong, he said quietly. I'm not a good man, Annabelle. I've done things. He stopped, shaking his head. Things that can't be undone. Papa said you'd say that too. Cole laughed, bitter and tired. He had an answer for everything, didn't he? He said good men are just the ones who keep trying, even when it hurts. They sat in silence after that, the sun climbing higher, the heat pressing down. Annabelle leaned against Cole's side, and he didn't pull away. Do you think the sisters will like me? She asked after a while. They'll love you. How do you know? Because you're brave and kind, and you don't give up. He looked down at her. That's all anyone could ask for. Annabelle smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it reached her eyes. Cole? Yeah? Papa was right about you. Cole didn't answer. He just tightened his arm around her shoulders and stared at the horizon, where the land stretched out forever, unforgiving and beautiful, and he made a promise not to Daniel Hewitt, not to the universe, but to himself. He wasn't going to let her down. They rode through the afternoon, the sun arcing across the sky like a burning wheel. By evening, they reached a ridge overlooking a shallow valley, and Cole pulled Patience to a stop. Below, in the distance, was a cluster of buildings, adobe and wood, surrounded by a low stone wall. Smoke rose from several chimneys, and Cole could make out figures moving between the structures. Santa Rosa? Annabelle asked. Not quite. Small settlement, maybe a trading post. Cole studied it carefully. We can rest there tonight, get supplies. They descended slowly, and as they drew closer, Cole's unease returned. The settlement was quiet, too quiet. No voices, no laughter, no sound of hammers or wagons, just silence. He dismounted at the edge of the wall, helping Annabelle down. Stay close. They walked through the gate, and Cole's hand moved to his gun. The place was deserted. Doors hung open, swaying in the breeze. A wagon sat abandoned, one wheel broken. A cooking fire smoldered in the center of the square, but no one tended it. Where is everyone? Annabelle whispered. Cole didn't answer. He moved forward, scanning the buildings, the shadows, the spaces between. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to get back on the horse and ride hard. But then he saw it, a piece of paper, nailed to the door of the largest building. He stepped closer, pulling it down. It was a notice, handwritten, the ink still fresh. To the man protecting the girl, we know where you're headed. We'll be waiting. V. We. Cole crumpled the paper, his jaw tight. Vance hadn't just taken the gold. He'd planned this, set a trap, and Cole had walked right into it. Annabelle looked up at him, her face pale. What do we do? Cole stared at the paper, then at the empty settlement, then at the girl beside him, and he made a decision. We finish this, he said. Tonight. They didn't wait for nightfall. Cole led Annabelle to the trading post, the largest building in the settlement, and barricaded the door behind them. Inside, the place was a mess, shelves overturned, supplies scattered, signs of a hasty retreat. But it was defensible. One door, two windows, thick walls. Stay low, Cole said, guiding Annabelle behind a counter. No matter what happens, you don't move unless I say. What are you going to do? What I should have done last night. He checked his weapons, Colt revolver, rifle, a knife in his boot. Not much, but enough. Then he moved to the window, peering through a crack in the shutters. The settlement remained still, waiting. Cole knew they were out there. Vance and his men, watching, circling. They'd cleared the place out, sent the settlers running, just to make this clean, just to make sure there were no witnesses. But Cole wasn't running. Not anymore. He thought about Daniel Hewitt, dead in that cabin, trusting a stranger to finish what he'd started. He thought about Annabelle, small and brave, carrying a weight no child should carry. And he thought about himself, about all the times he'd walked away, all the fights he'd avoided, all the people he'd failed. This was where it stopped. An hour passed. Then, too, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the square. Cole's muscles ached from staying tense, but he didn't move, didn't blink. And then, finally, they came. 4 riders this time, not 3. They entered through the gate slowly, fanning out, rifles resting across their saddles. Vance was in the lead, his face hard and cold in the fading light. They stopped in the center of the square, and Vance dismounted, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Cole," he called, his voice echoing. "I know you're in there, and I know you're thinking about making a stand, but here's the thing: you can't win. Not against four of us. So why don't you save us all the trouble and send the girl out?" Cole didn't answer. Vance sighed, shaking his head. "You're a fool, you know that. All this for a kid who isn't even yours. For a man you didn't even remember." He spat into the dirt. "What kind of idiot dies for that?" Cole's voice came from the darkness, low and steady. "The kind who keeps his promises." Vance laughed. "Promises? To who?" "A dead man. To her." The laughter stopped. Vance's face darkened, and he gestured to his men. "Burn it." Two of the men dismounted, pulling torches from their saddles. They lit them quickly, the flames roaring to life, and moved toward the trading post. Cole waited until they were 10 feet from the door. Then he fired. The first shot took the nearest man in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second shot shattered the torch in the other man's hand, spraying sparks across the ground. The remaining 2 men drew their guns, firing wildly at the building. Bullets punched through the shutters, splintering wood. But Cole was already moving, shifting positions, reloading. Vance dove behind a wagon, shouting orders, and the square erupted into chaos. Cole fired again, driving one man back toward the gate. Another shot clipped the second man's leg, and he went down, cursing. But there were still 3 of them, and Cole's ammunition wouldn't last forever. He ducked behind the counter, breathing hard, and glanced at Annabelle. She was curled into a ball, her hands over her ears, but her eyes were open, watching. "I'm sorry," Cole said. She shook her head. A bullet smashed through the window above them, raining glass down. Cole fired back, blind, then moved to the other side of the room. Vance's voice cut through the gunfire. "This is your last chance, Cole. Send her out, and I'll let you walk." "You're a liar," Cole shouted back. "Maybe, but you're a dead man either way." Cole reloaded, his hands steady despite the adrenaline. He had 4 rounds left. 4 rounds, 3 men. Not good odds. But then he heard it, hoofbeats. Fast and heavy, coming from the east. Vance heard it too. He turned, squinting into the distance, and his face went pale. A line of riders appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the dying sun. 8 of them, maybe more, moving in formation. And at the front, a man in a black coat with a silver star pinned to his chest. "The law," Vance cursed, mounting his horse. "Move." Now, his men scrambled, one limping, the other clutching his shoulder. They rode hard toward the west gate, but the lawmen were faster. Shots rang out, and one of Vance's men went down, his horse rearing. The others kept riding, disappearing into the scrub, but the lawmen didn't chase. They surrounded the settlement, cutting off the exits, and the man with the star dismounted, walking toward the trading post. Cole stepped out, his rifle lowered but ready. The lawman stopped a few feet away, studying him. He was older, weathered, with sharp eyes, and a scar running across his jaw. "You Cole Brennan?" he asked. "I am. Marshal Greer. Got a telegram 2 days ago from Santa Fe. Said a man named Daniel Hewitt had evidence on a gang running territory from here to El Paso. Said if anything happened to him, we'd find his daughter with a man named Cole." He looked past Cole into the trading post. "That her?" Cole nodded. Greer's face softened. "She all right?" "She is now." The marshal gestured, and 2 of his men dismounted, moving cautiously toward the west ridge. "We'll track Vance down. Won't get far." He looked back at Cole. "You did a good thing here." "I didn't do much. You kept her alive. That's more than most would have done." Greer tipped his hat. "We'll need the evidence," Hewitt collected. "The girl know where it is?" "She does." "Good. We'll take her statement, get her settled with the sisters in Santa Rosa like you wanted. You're free to go." Cole turned, looking at Annabelle, who stood in the doorway now, small and quiet. "I'll take her," Cole said. Greer raised an eyebrow. "You sure? It's another 3 days' ride." "I'm sure." The marshal studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but we'll send an escort, just in case." 3 days later, Cole and Annabelle stood outside the mission in Santa Rosa, a whitewashed building with a bell tower and a garden blooming with wildflowers. The sisters came out to meet them, their faces kind, their hands gentle as they guided Annabelle inside. She stopped at the door, looking back at Cole. "Will you come visit?" she asked. "I will. Promise." Cole knelt, meeting her eyes. "I promise." She smiled, then ran to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. He held her tight, and for a moment, the world was quiet. When she pulled away, she reached into her pocket and handed him something, the photograph, the one of him and her father. "Keep it," she said, "so you don't forget." Cole took it, his throat tight. "I won't." She disappeared inside, and the door closed softly behind her. Cole stood there for a long time, the photograph in his hand, the wind stirring the dust at his feet. Then he mounted Patience and rode north, toward the horizon, where the land stretched out forever. Years later, a woman would tell the story of a cowboy who saved a little girl in the West. She'd say he wasn't a hero, not the kind you read about in books, but he was the kind who showed up when it mattered, the kind who kept his promises. And in a small mission in Santa Rosa, a teacher named Annabelle would keep that photograph on her desk, where the light hit it just right, and she'd remember.